going to continue to do what I was doing, which is to develop the file editor class. But before I do that, I'm going to briefly talk about something that I learned recently, and I think I should talk about it here. I just want to wait to see if it's streaming first. Actually, I'm going to talk about it, then I'll check later. So basically, if you're considering working on this company here, apparently some weird things are happening to people that decide to speak the truth and work for this company. And the name of this guy is this one. And yeah, so I think it's pretty obvious if you read on the comments and if you watch the interview that his mother did. It's pretty obvious what's happening. So yeah, I would consider and think very carefully if you are someone that is considering working on this company here. I would consider it very carefully. And the other thing that I'm going to talk about is obviously I will never unalive myself ever. And if anything happens to me, you already know what it is. So yeah, I just recently learned about this, and I think it's very worth it talking about it. And if you are watching this, obviously, I think that you should let everyone know about this and put pressure in any way you can to try to push people into trying to figure out what the actual truth is. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about before. So I just finished I'm still gonna use the virtual chat talking thing. But I was gonna do this anyway later, and I looked into alternatives as well. But I wanna finish the other stuff first, but I'm obviously gonna focus on this at some point. But there's so many things to learn and so much stuff to do that's kind of hard to do it. So obviously, I just have to go with the path of least resistance now. But if I'm forced into the position that I have to look for alternatives, that's what I'm gonna do. And if I can't look for alternatives, then obviously I'll just revert back to the previous way of doing things, and I'll keep trying to build regardless of what happens. So the last thing that I did here was I'm gonna run on the debugger. So I'm trying to figure out how to make it so that I transform there's an event on the pop-up class and the pop-up panel. I think it's on the pop-up class, and pop-up panel inherits from pop-up class that makes the window or the pop-up close if the parents or some other node is focused. So every time you click off the component of the panel of the pop-up, is going to close the pop-up. And obviously they don't like that. So in order to solve that, I decided that probably the best thing to do is to inherit from window instead, because the pop-up inherits from window. But then there is a problem because of which later I figure out is because of the flags. So I think one of the main differences between the pop-up and the window is that the pop-up sets these flags here in the beginning, but I didn't know that. So because I wasn't setting these flags, it's kind of weird the way that the window shows up there. And I also had to change some classes here to make the thing work in the way that I was thinking about, which is closer to the way that this works. and how to find the icons as well that they use here, and download the icons and put here. And now it seems that it is like, obviously it's not exactly like this, but I don't care that much. It's like close, and I can improve later if I want to. But the thing that is kind of annoying is the position, and I want to have the ability to be able to drag the components. So what I did was set one of the flags off that I had. I just put this one here to see, to try to debug some things. But if you press Ctrl F here, so like the position is a little bit off. And it's because of the calculations that I'm doing there. But now if I press the arrow here, it shows this. Oh, I have to put the input as well. Because the way that they were doing before, they were using the same input for both of the bars, and they did it in a different way. So obviously this is the way that I want to do here. So I'm gonna have to put another input there, and I'm gonna have to review the functions that work as callbacks from signals. Probably remove this selection only, or put an icon here, because I think it's better. And then I set. I think I didn't set the tooltips for these ones, but these ones, yeah, these ones I set the tooltip. So I have to set the tooltip for these ones as well. And like the difference when I have the flag is this cross thing here, and the fact that you can drag the thing around. So if I uncomment this, which is this flag here that sets on the window, it's not going to show this part on the top here. And the downside is that it's not going to allow me to drag. So I want to see if it is possible to do this. But the problem is that I looked into the window class and I couldn't find the icon, because I think they are doing this on a different way that the icon here is done. The icon there is done based on the button, and you have to set the icon on the notification post initialize or some other signal or some other part of the notification cycle, because that's how the control class works. It's basically initializing here. The side button there is the button here. And the other thing that I think I have to do is like when you click on this one, it doesn't do anything, because I assume that I don't have anything connected to the signal that this probably emits. But it changes the color of the thing. And I think that this happens based on this different textures here. But this one, it doesn't change the color, I think. For the other ones, it doesn't change for the arrow, and I think I have to do that. So maybe I should do this now. And the thing is, I'm using the same icon for all of them. Not sure. The problem is on the window, it doesn't show anything. Like, it doesn't have anything related to this. So I have to figure out how the fuck they do this. They put this. At what point do they put the thing here? And I did search based on so the function that you have to call is the pop-up. And I'm setting based on a function there, this update pop-up rectangle. And this is based on ChatGPT code. So this one I made it. I refactored the way that they were doing there, and I separated into two different functions to make it easier to understand. So one function creates the search bar, the other one creates the replace bar, and they're connected through a VBox container. And then there's another HBox container that connects the arrow, where like I put the arrow as a child first, and then I put the other VBox container as a child. So the arrows directly on the main one there, and then on the signal you change the visualization and the size of the window. Basically, but this is the function that's gonna run after you press Ctrl F, and it calls this function that creates the pop-up based on this rectangle, which is based on the size of the main div there, the main container for the HBox container for the stuff that is going to show there. So the question is how do I know It's weird because it doesn't have inputs here. I think this inherits from viewports. I think they have a function there on the push. Like probably what I should do is just to try to see. I already spent like some time, but not a lot of time on this. Obviously, there's two different alternatives. So one thing that I can do, regardless of the alternatives, I think I have to figure out anyway because I'm gonna depend on the logic here. Like one thing is to leave it like this and then just add the logic to close the window on this icon here instead of having this one. And then I remove this one from this component, this bar. The other one is to figure out how to do the dragging of the window and then I remove this thing here. And the downside of having this is that it looks very big, the component. And this is also something that I'm not really sure if it's like because of the relative size here. But this one looks a lot smaller. I don't know if it's because of the size difference. And I'm not sure if that's gonna matter that much, if it's gonna be annoying to have this. To be this big. So I'm pretty sure I put the maybe the tooltip doesn't work because of the type. So the way that the way that the events work on the viewport is through the push something function. Let's find here. At some point on the cycle, on the main iteration there that Godot has, is gonna use a Windows API. I think it uses a class that is abstract base class that is gonna the different OSs are gonna inherit from, and then depending which OS, which build you're using, it's gonna be for different OSs, obviously. And then that class is gonna have the API. It's gonna have functions that implement the APIs from the operational system to get the events from the window. Because the functions of the operational system are the functions that actually use the driver, which is just like a software program, to use the hardware to create the what is actually shown on the screen. So you first you guess the events using those APIs from the operational system, and then after you guess the events, I don't remember exactly the nuances, but I know it's gonna call a function from the. So I think that it calls first from the class that manages the display, either the display or device. I think probably the device. Yeah, I think it's device, which has a function that deals with the events. And then that function is gonna call another function from viewports, and eventually viewport's gonna call this push inputs. Is either push input or is push something. And then on this function here is the one that parses the input, I think. But on this case here, I think that actually I do think that it is calling this function because I do remember that at some point, but I'm not on the. At some point I put the breakpoint here and it stopped, but I didn't see anything related to the stuff that I wanted to see, which is the icon and the drag. So I already put here. I removed. Yeah. So now. So, but the weird thing is that, like, I think that this is happening because of a different reason. Because it seems that the pop-up doesn't trigger these inputs. It's just the windows for or the normal classes. They are part of the scene that are gonna trigger this. So it doesn't work to put a breakpoint there because it's obviously not the event that I'm interested on. But I think that this is the main function that is going to parse the inputs. And this function obviously is going to call some other functions that are going to do different logic for different types of events. what I really want to know is where do they create signals for the icon there, the close icon on the window. The thing is that the window class has functions that like itself to handle the themes and stuff like that. So I think that it's not gonna directly create a button using a texture 3D or a button class. It's gonna use something related to the themes, I think. I'm not 100% sure. And also, according to ChatGPT, I think it is on the control class that it handles the events. But sometimes the responses that I get from ChatGPT are kind of weird. And I think it really depends on the way, like, probably the way that you phrase the question and the context that it has of the conversation. Because I notice, like, sometimes it has, like, you're gonna ask questions and then it has very good responses, but then other times it leads you into a completely uh, different path that doesn't make sense. And I think that the main differentiator is what's knowledge you built from around the problem, like the context you have around the problem. So you kind of have to lead it in the correct way. You have to ask like questions that's already like point out the correct way, let's say, of thinking. Then from that point, it's gonna give like good responses. But if you just ask generic questions of like, how can I solve this? How does the window does something on Godot, for example? Like how does the window create the icon? Then if you ask these kinds of questions, it's very likely that it's gonna give a response that doesn't make sense. But if you ask like on the window class, there is this event, there's this function that calls push inputs, and then push input calls this function from viewports, and then viewport does this. So knowing this, where do you think that is the logic to find where this thing happened? So those kinds of questions usually tend to give much better responses. Oh, the thing that is kind of I can show now, it's kind of annoying, is that I can show here, like the resizing of things is very annoying. I think I'm just gonna leave it that way for now, and like do the easiest thing possible just to move on to the next problems, because otherwise it's gonna be too annoying. But obviously, probably the way that I can implement this is based on size calculation, so you get the size of the components based on some signal that is going to emit when the window resizes. I think it's probably going to be on the notification. And then based on that, you like I can hide these components on the tabs if they're visible. And I can change the size of the other ones as well to achieve the same effect that they have here. But when I move there, so this is partially the reason why I want to see if I can allow the dragging of the component so that it becomes, even if the component is outside of the visible, like not fully outside of the visible range, but somewhat outside where you can see the close icon, that you can drag the component back. Because the problem is that the only logic that exists to close the thing is going to be on the icon, the close icon. So if the close icon is not visible and you press Ctrl F, you can't close it anymore unless you're able to drag the components and expose. So that's probably the main reason why I think that's is the easiest way to solve this for now. Because I think that figuring out how to make it like stay on the same position is kind of more annoying. I think you have to use anchors Just slightly more annoying to figure out. Skip that. So the question is how to figure out, like, how can I put the breakpoints? Where can I put the breakpoints? Should study the flow so I can see what happens there. Yeah, that's basically the function there. So this function calls this one. This one I think is from is the other one from viewport. So this one is gonna call the function at the end there. That is basically this function here. Yeah. So it calls at different points depending on what kind of event it is. And it calls in the end here. And this function here is the one that calls push inputs, I think. Then push input's gonna parse the event. And this is right after it gets the events from the using the operational system. Yeah, use the display server. The display server is not the rendering device, is the display server. So the class that is gonna have the logic for managing events. I'll go one more time to see if I can find some other breakpoints. I think I have to skip this logic. It's probably better to look for the press inputs first. So it doesn't look like this is gonna have logic related to pass. So I do this. So one thing that I thought about is to look for the flag here. I don't think so it's probably better to look for this. I looked into another function, but not this one, I think. So I need to figure out how this flag changes the view. So it's probably, yeah, that's the thing that is kind of annoying. I think it's probably gonna use the display server class, and it's kind of annoying because you can't look into can only look on runtime. But I think I'm gonna, because I already know that it's gonna be display server Windows on the build that I have now. So I'm gonna look into this one. Of course, look into the window there, then look into this one. A Windows set flag. So it's probably on the display server, the logic to connect or to create the icon. And it might come from the operational system API. I'm pretty sure this function is from operational systems. It's like the API to load the library. Yeah. So I can look for the path here. It comes from the Microsoft build. Yeah. MSVC build. This gets the address, obviously, but this I think is unrelated. It's just another dynamic linked library. This one is related to the kernel and the DLL. User also Probably linked to the kernel as well. Kernel rings. Windows Ink API for pen inputs available on Windows 8 Plus only. Okay, so let me think. So I'm gonna ask how to search for how to connect the events on. I'm thinking about how to ask this. Actually, maybe we should just look for the connect thing here. The problem is if it is, but there should be a way, I think, to connect signals to the icon. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to have the icon there. There should be one way. Maybe the thing is that it might not be through signals, but I think that there should be a way to connect signal to. If there isn't a way to connect the signal, then there must be a function or something that allows you to put a callback or something like allows you to put logic on the close icon since it doesn't come with the logic. So if it did close when I click, then obviously it would mean that the function is on the class itself. So either they allow you to connect a signal to this icon to close the window, or there is some way, like some function you can call or something. So if it's not on the window class, it should be on the display server. Probably. Maybe some other class. Maybe it's the viewports or the control. But I think it doesn't make sense to be the control class because obviously the logic is related to pop-ups. I think it should be on the window class probably. There isn't anything here. I think it doesn't make sense to be here as well, I think. It makes more sense to be. Okay, if there isn't a signal, then it's probably some API. Like it's probably something with the question is how. I think if I look into the documentation, uh, it's probably better to go over the display server and then search for the functions that they use there. Probably the best. You should go over the pop-up first. The thing is, should be both on the constructor and the pop-up, because those are the main functions that are going to be called. So here, nothing really happens. Just uses this. Set the modes, the owner. So I should be on the pop-up. And I also saw this, and because I searched for the close icon, and I saw that. So this is the reason why I think is something related to the thing that the window class is probably different, because they are using this, but I think that they are not using this close variable anywhere else, which is the weird part. So I think there's something on the cycle that the window class normally does. It might be on the, but I think it doesn't have notification. From what I remember, this is gonna set a callback for the theme context to get the value of the variable that subscribes to this. And so this is gonna be the props, and this is the class and the type, which is a variant. It's gonna be also no, it's gonna be an enum that they use to decide which function to call to get the value. And this is basically this lambda here is the callback function that they are gonna use on the TeamDB when it's getting these values for the class. So they're gonna use this to get the function based on the type. And this is from the control class, I think, and is going to call different functions based on whatever the type is to get the value, which is the name here, which is the third thing here. In this case, would be this one. So this case is the close, which is the icon that is used to create the hide button. So I imagine that that's enum there is the thing that is setting the icon there, this icon here on the window. But the weird thing is that it doesn't do anything with this variable, so that's what I think is kind of weird. But I assume that it's gonna automatically set that somehow by using that enum. Not sure how though. It must be on the control class, I think, or something like that. It is on the thing class, not control. I'll be right back. Puts the no camera. Yeah, be right back. I have an idea. I think it's gonna be S9. Was requested. I'm gonna put the dash. Hmm. So I'm gonna go from the pop-up function. Let's see. Zero. So the flag. I need to think like it's probably better to try to look for where he uses it like what is the button exactly, because once I know that, it's gonna be easier, I think, to figure out what is the bar. Then once I figure out how is this bar created here, I'm gonna be able to see if I can put breakpoints on whatever class or whatever function creates this bar here, to see if I can find the drag and drop or the dragging logic. I think both the main things to figure out is what happens when you click the how to add the logic to this icon here. How do they make it so that it changes the color when you click? Because here it doesn't do anything when I click on the arrows. And the other thing is the dragging functionality. Then once I figure that out, I can think about. I think probably the best thing is gonna be to remove set the flag to remove this, and then add. It depends on how hard the dragging logic is, how much I'm gonna have to change. But I think that's probably the best alternative. This is gonna be the flag that it has there. I'm gonna search for this flag first. So that should be this thing here, and this title art is the thing that creates the window there. But it's still not sure. So I forgot to. So this only exists here. Mm. This is the function that is going to call the callbacks that it sends there. So the lambda that is set on the macro to to bind or to update the values on with the theme cache is gonna call this. So basically, this function here that is calling is the lambda that it sets up on the macro related to the theme. So you're just gonna be calling that, and it's gonna loop over all of them, and then call that function. And that function is gonna update the value of the theme cache with the value of the class on the theme. So just updating the values. The thing that I don't understand is it's not. It seems that it's not doing anything with the value though. That's the thing that is weird. Yeah, so it should be the display server. And this is gonna be from the API. So I think it is something, I'm not sure. So the question to ask is how do they, if it is possible to SAS. I think it has to be possible because obviously I think it's the same logic that they use to create the actual windows. But it has to be a different icon though. But it's probably using APIs, operational system APIs to create the window. I wanted to go from that point so that it's easier to see what functions from this class are related to the. So maybe we should go over from the window class, from the pop-up, then investigate all functions that they have, write down the functions that are called using the display server singleton, then investigate those functions first on this class here. I'm just gonna briefly look into the things that it does here. Yeah, so this obviously has to be the function that creates a window, but actually I'm not really sure though, because it is a singleton, so it's kind of weird. So there are actually functions that I saw there that are related to IDs. So maybe those functions. So I think that this one is the one that creates the main window for the application. So like it's the window of the whole thing, this window here. But then it has other functions to create windows in the same way that it creates these ones. And it probably uses the positioner pass. So every time you create, it creates another window object, uses this API to create a device object. Set event dispatch function. So let me think for this. There were two things that I want to. So one thing that I wanted to see is what is this WC? It's probably from Windows, yeah. So the window class struct API. Instance cursor. I'm pretty sure this is the thing that's. I think I already looked into this code, but a long time ago. When I was still like in the beginning of studying the engine, I wanted to understand the Vulkan stuff. So I think the first time that I went over, I wanted to figure out what function creates the window. And it is from the display server on the main setup function that uses a function that they subscribed before. So they subscribe a callback on the display server first because it's going to depend on which operational system you're using, so which build you're using. Then the display server is going to use that callback function to create the window. And I think eventually it's going to call this function here. So this one is the one that uses the API from the operational system to actually create the window. But obviously it still doesn't answer the question that I have now, which is how do they implement the logic to close the window? You're pressing the button. And obviously I assume that based on the flags here, it's gonna set the value, which is probably a member variable. I think it is a member variable, this R style here. I know it passes to the function, so it's gonna use this value on the other one. But depending on which flags you pass there, it's gonna change based on this also API, which is an enum, I think. No, is the macros that they put the like they use the bit fields to change the modes, change the visualization, the style of the window. So they're gonna use that variable, which is probably this one here. So I assume what is happening there on the pop-up is that based on the flags we pass, they are using this on here, which is going to change the value of this, which they're going to use later to create the window, to use the window API, Windows API to create the actual window. So obviously I assume that this is going to change there. I'll go back to this. Yeah, this is the thing that uses the space server to guess some ID or something. So current screen. There's other stuff that is gonna use the numbers. Assume these are the functions that are gonna create. The other thing that I saw some time ago, I think I need to figure out how to set this is embedded true, so that you can move outside of the. I do remember trying to figure this out, but it was more annoying because it doesn't directly set anything. It's just based on this get embedder, different than null pointer. So maybe if I set this, if I use this on the constructor, it says false by default. Problem is that I'm not sure, like, if I sat on this class, if I sat on this class here, I think it's probably not gonna work, but maybe it does. Does. Obviously, easier to just test. It's gonna depend. Like maybe I should set on the class. Like the thing is, if I can't really set on the class that is gonna initialize this one because it's not gonna be a window class. It's not gonna be a viewport, I think. So it only makes sense to set here, but I'm not really sure if this is gonna be considered as the parent of the pop-up. I think it probably will, but I'm not sure. So if this is where you should test, obviously. But this is only one of the issues. So it's gonna be more complicated to figure out how to how the dragging works because I think it's something to do with the way that the display server is gonna handle the events, which is related to the window class, but I think which is related to the operational system as well. But I'm not really sure if it's gonna be fully like if it's gonna be Godot stuff or more the operational system stuff that allows you to drag. 'Cause it might be something like inside of the API that after you create a window, it's gonna already like it's gonna have logic inside of the kernel to like integrate the graphics driver as well. That is gonna set up the events, the callback events. So it might be like hidden on the API of the operational system instead of being exposed on the code here. So I think when I sat there, it's gonna put this to true, so it's gonna get from here, but now it's getting from here. So it's gonna get visible, but it might change the visualization. Let's spend some time on this one first. Let's go over the calls that it makes here. Like it seems that the way that it works is that it's gonna be set by like this I got from the pop-up. So I think that since it sets to false here, it doesn't show in the beginning, and then the main thing that it's gonna do is gonna set this to true when the pop-up happens. But I think that that's not what creates the window. The window is already created at that point. I think that's, but I'm not 100% sure. And it's gonna use the display server to create the window. That's I'm 100% sure. So it's gonna use the display server. Display server is gonna use the Windows API or whatever operational system you're using, and then depending on the flags you put there, the operating system is gonna have is gonna create the window with different styles in different ways. So that I think is I'm pretty sure about this, but I'm still not 100% sure about the events. So I wanna have an idea of what kind of functions is calling from this class first, from display server, to see if there's anything that seems that might be related to events. And then after that, I'm gonna spend some time probably on the display server Windows class to see if I can find anything. Probably search for the main functions first, like notification and the GUI input, stuff like that. So maybe I should go over again the main setup function and the points that they're gonna create the window, the first window, the application window. And also try to remember, because I do remember at some points, I guess like the event is easier to figure out. But I think it's on the beginning there, and it's more annoying to figure out how does which callback is set to call the event on the viewport there, and like there's a function I think it's on the display server that has a massive switch statement that is gonna actually parse the inputs from the operating system. It's probably on the display server, so that one is gonna be interesting to see. That's probably the function actually that they use there to implement some functionality. So I assume that probably what makes sense is that it's based on the flags. So the reason why it's not closing, hey, thanks for the follow. The reason why it's not closing the window is because you have to set some flag, or it's probably because of the pop-up flag. I'm not reading the chats, just so you know, because previous times where people usually when actually always when it displays the follow is because of Twitch, because I'm streaming to Twitch and YouTube at the same time. And usually when that happens, people type on the chat, but I'm not reading the chats anymore because I found, at least for now, that it's not worth it to read it. It's like a lose-lose situation or win-lose. Then maybe in the future, I don't know, go back and forth between this, reading the chats or not. Because I think it really depends on the reason why you are streaming. And when I stream, I'm trying to actually get things done and focus on the solving the problems that I have to build what I'm trying to build. So usually, like the chances of getting like inputs that are not gonna be distracting and stuff like that is very low. So for that reason, I think it's probably not worth it to like, read the chat. And so maybe this one is interesting to look at. Put event callback. This is interesting. I didn't realize. So probably here is the place where it's going to actually create the window. So it uses this probably to get the ID or to update the ID. Yeah, window ID. So I think and this happens when the node is gonna enter the tree. So because the class is a window, this class here, when the node is inserted on the tree, it's gonna run this, which is gonna update this member variable, which is gonna have the ID of the window. I think that here is probably where it creates the window. And then on the pop-up, it's gonna make it visible, and based on the logic there, it's gonna, I think either on the pop-up or here, it's gonna call this function, and this function is the one that actually creates the window. But when I set, I think when I set to visible, to set this embedding sub windows to true here is not gonna do anything because it's the same class that is initializing the thing. We're not really sure which one is better. I think it's better to make it, as far as I think right now, what's sub window, like what this call is gonna allow me to do is to make the pop-up to be limited to the components, to the text editor components. But I'm not really sure if it's better to do it like that. It's easier because when you resize, then like it's gonna make sure that the icon is always visible because the component is gonna be visible. Or like it's gonna decrease the chances that the icon goes outside of the screen. But I think it might be better to allow it to move around the whole thing because like this is something that I wish they had here. Maybe there is a setting to do this, to drag this around. No, I don't think that it matters that much, to be honest. But it would be like slightly more convenient if you want to like put this like here or somewhere else. So maybe it's better to leave it as false, but I still wanna try to see what happens there. So now let's look into this. I'm gonna see if I find these ones first. Yeah. So from what I remember, it was related to this. I'm pretty sure. So like this, it has to be this class. It's gonna have a function that has a switch statement that is gonna parse the inputs, And then at some point it's gonna call this callbacks here. Sure. And so this one pass. The window ID is gonna be the ID that they use to keep on the hash map that the other class, the display server has. So I think that probably the way that it works is the display server has a function that parses the inputs using the operational system. Then depending which kind of input it is gonna look for this hash map to see or to call the callbacks for all the windows. The thing is, it doesn't seem that this function is being called, so not sure what's going on. What's I'm pretty sure I already put a breakpoint there. It doesn't seem that it calls. It's here. Oh. So it does call this. But the thing is, like there on the other class, I think that there isn't anything related to dragging. So let me think. It makes more sense to find the function on the display server first. So I'm gonna look into the display server first. Then I will think about this later. But this thing is gonna be a hash map. Yeah. So this is a binary tree, I think. It's another class. I do remember that I saw this somewhere, but I don't remember. Well, I think it was on the code edit stuff. I don't remember exactly where. I think it's on the stuff related to tax inputs, like updating the states of the tax. RB trees. A red black tree. Oh, I can put here and then just look into the stack. See if I can find. Yeah, this is the function. So let me think. Yeah, this is the function here. This is the one that I was talking about. So this is a very long time ago. I'm pretty sure that it is this function here. So this function is gonna be called, so I don't remember where. So I'm obviously gonna go back to this. I think that's the one of the last ones. I guess so. So I think that this is set as a callback somewhere. And like on the initialization, it's gonna set this function as the callback. Some other, but I think I can't go before this here. Maybe we should put a breakpoint here at the end of this function, or See which one calls this one. But the one that matters is the other one there, I think. This one. So I have to find which one of these cases is gonna be the input that I'm interested on without setting the other ones. That's hmm. I think it's probably better anyway to figure out how they move the window and then try to implement on the other class, because it's better if the component is as small as possible. I think should not like be annoying on the visualization. So I think it's better if the window doesn't have the border with the other icon, and I have to figure out how to implement the dragging functionality on the components on the replace bar class. You sure? Yeah, so there are these two things here. Mouse enter and mouse leave. Are gonna be called there. I think here it doesn't have anything. There isn't anything on this class related to dragging. I think it does change the cursor. So I put here. When it's dragging, it changes the cursor. And it's gonna do this with this class here. Almost 100% sure this is going to be involved. So now I am very confident that this is going to be the function that handles the input there and implements the dragging. And obviously, probably the way that it's going to work is that you set a flag on the down when you press the mouse, then you have the calculation of the position on the mouse move, and then you release or turn off the flag on the mouse up event. And I think obviously it's going to happen through here. And the way that it's going to work is going to use the hash map there to change the state of the window. So I assume that there must be either some logic on the window or this class here that is gonna change depending on the flags that it has. But it might be this class here that changes the position of the window. So obviously, like I said before, I think that the best alternative is to try to translate to put the logic on find the replace bar that I have there to be able to drag the window without having the border. I think that's the best way to do it if I can't figure out. And then if I can't figure that out, or if there isn't any obvious easy way to do that, then the best way is to try to figure out how to add the logic to actually close the window when it clicks the icon there, and then I remove the other icon that I have on the thing, and then I leave the thing with the border. Leave the pop-up with the border. Problem with these ones is obviously it's gonna trigger because both of the things there are windows. So I need to find the place where it's only gonna trigger when I click on the pop-up to understand the logic. Then I track the states. Then with the states, I find the other places that are gonna implement the movements. So I think that probably the way to implement is through those callbacks. So I need to write down the callbacks that the window class is gonna be able to put there on the events. And I can change the window class obviously, but then it's more risky and might be annoying. And obviously I think it's better to see if I can subscribe a callback or something on the find the replace bar class, this class here. So either a callback or a notification here. Then based on that, I implement logic on this one that changes the position of the variable that I'm using to create the components. Which I think is this variable here, main bars container, which is going to be the parents of the whole component. Yeah, so I think that the way to do it is through implementing callbacks here. If I can't set a flag or something on this display server that allows me to maintain the movements without having the border. One thing that I want to understand though is like how I think I kind of already understand is when you create the window, if you have this shoot through, it's just gonna you on the API there is gonna pass as the argument or as a data to the function on the Windows API or the operating system API that is gonna create the window without the border. This is more a operating system thing. The flag here is not related to Godot. And then I assume that so the events on the display server have to be linked to this border, I think. So obviously one of the values to write down is this block however status. I think I'm gonna go over this events here and write down all of the things that it might use from the. So from what I remember, this window ID is gonna be the ID that it uses there on the window class. When it creates the window, it's gonna create this. So on the notification enter of the window is gonna update the ID. This here. So this runs when the node enters the tree. And I think if it is not embedded, it's gonna run this stuff here, which means it's gonna put the value of the ID on here. So probably when it runs this function on the display server, it's gonna set this value here, and it's gonna set this value on the API, Windows API as well. So it's gonna link the state of this window class with the windows through this variable. And yeah, it's gonna use this window ID to put the window on the hash map that the display server is gonna have of the windows. So I think it's gonna find this class here based on this thing. So whatever comes after is gonna be related to the state of this class, I think. So probably what I have to do is go over the events there that I think are related to the dragging, and then search for all the variables that it changes, and see if they are mentioned on this class here. Let's see, as with. The thing is not the same thing. It's probably on the display server actually, those values, because it maps that to the window data, and the window data is the struct inside of the is this struct here inside of the display server. So it's gonna be values on the display server has, but that's kind of the link. So the window ID is the link between them, which is the variable that it puts there. But the state is changed. The state is changed on the display server. Display server manages everything using the Windows or using the operating system API. So it changes the actual state of the window, and then the window class from Godot is gonna react to these changes, I think. And then from the class that I have, which inherits from the window, I have to see how to connect to the state of the display server. I think it's probably not. It's probably better to go over the events first. I want to see here. Yeah, so it's only. So this is probably the flag variable that they use to, yeah, enter and leave. One of the flag variables that they use to implement dragging logic. And this is going to be related to the function that gets called there on the main iteration cycle. Which is going to call this function here. So I'm probably gonna have to remove this. So it's probably calling this function every time that's like for a bunch of different events that the operating system API is gonna check. Oh, I wanted to see where does it use this. So it's here. Oh, this is the constructor. So I think it is on the. No, there's both the constructor and there is another function that I remember gets called on the initialization there, the first window that it creates. Because the other one, I think the other function is related to Vulkan. Or some other, I think it's the rendering device that calls the display server. You don't already saw. That's right here. I think rendering device is the class related. I think it's. I think I did a scatter draw chart a long time ago with the connection. A rendering context. No, I think it's rendering device, the one related to Vulkan. So this probably comes from Windows, I think. And is a default function. So I'm gonna search there, but I'm pretty sure that that's what's going on. So why does this put? So this is gonna probably register. So I think this comes from Windows as well. So I think what is happening is that it creates the struct, allocates memory for the struct for that has the information for the window. Then this is going to be the default place where you should put the callback function you want, or the function that you want to run to process events on the window. Then when you call this class here, it's going to register that window. It's going to use the operating system API to register the device on the kernel, I think, or on the graphics driver. And then like internally on the operating system or on the kernel is gonna call this function to process the events. I think that's what's happening. Then from here it calls from the display server by getting the singleton. So this is initialized on the main signup function because it's the abstract base class, and all the other the main classes work like this, where I have the base class that is generic. Then you have different classes that are going to derive from that generic class that are going to be specific to each kind of build that you have. And then this one is going to have its own function to handle or to process the inputs. I assume that on the other display servers it's going to be basically the same thing, but you're going to have a different standard function that the operating system exposes to parse inputs from events. And I think that the way that it works is that the operating system is going to have a graphics driver. The driver is going to be the driver communicates with the. No, I'm not 100% sure if the driver communicates with the operating system. I think the operating system. No, the driver communicates with the operating system. Operating system communicates with the hardware. And then the hardware allocates the memory. I think that's how it works. It has to be how it works because in order to create the driver, you have to use standard functions. So it creates an object. So you use the operating system to create objects, and then you change the state based on structs that the operating system is gonna have to manage the state. Yeah, so it has to be like that. So you have the graphics driver. The graphics driver is gonna communicate with the operating system logic or the kernel, and the kernel is gonna communicate with the hardware to actually allocate the resources. And this is creating the bridge, I think. So like this function here. So the driver probably parses the inputs, sends through the operation system. Operation system is gonna call this function based on the whatever you subscribe there using the other function. And then this function calls the one from Godot, and then it parses the inputs. Pretty sure that's how it works. One thing that I figured out is that you can, which is one of the very nice thing about the Windows documentation, is that you can download the PDF here. And when you download, there's other places where you can do this. I forgot exactly where it is. But when you download the PDF, it comes everything on the same file. It's a lot better to read than through this, which is what I'm doing here. So this is for the, I just started this one now, but there's a bunch of other stuff that I have to finish watching here before. But I'm gonna read this. The downside obviously is that there's like a lot of pages, so it's gonna take some time, but I think it's probably very worth it to read this stuff. And it is a very nice thing that they have. Yeah, callback function, we should define your application. Finds a pointer to this callback function. There's a placeholder for the name of the function that you define your application. Obviously, the massive downside of Windows is that they want to spy everything you do, track everything you do, and use that data to train AI to control you. So that is a lot more negative than positive. Can't really blame them though, I think. It's more complicated than that, obviously. The game theory, but still very annoying. It's like an attractor state that the market economy produces. So I'm gonna remove this things here. 'Cause now I think I understand how it works. I'm gonna remove. Hmm. And this is kind of weird that it's calling this here. So obviously I didn't change the position. Good idea to write down the name of the function. So just gonna first. I'm not sure remove this. Maybe I'll put one here to see what happens the first time. I think just gonna propagate these events, and it doesn't have anything here. I'm trying to figure out first if I can use the display server logic to implement the drag, because that's a lot easier. So I think that the easiest path that I can think now, obviously, is gonna be to like listen to. So what happens here when this runs is that it's going to call the notification function, passing this as an argument for every node, I think, on the tree. Either every node on the tree or maybe the parents of this. So I think what I can do is just define these notifications on this class here, on the notification function there, and then I can put the logic to like set the flag when the mouse down happens, and then the other flag when the mouse up, and then do the movements, just calculate the delta of the position of the mouse, and then move the position of the thing there. So I think that this is the easiest way to. Obviously, I'm not sure if that would work, but it's the easiest way I can think. But then it's more annoying because you have to like deal with the specifics. So obviously, it's easier if I can figure out if there is a way to use the display server directly to do the work for me. So that's what I'm gonna try to do first. On the So here's gonna call the callback that is subscribes there. So I think here is gonna call from the window class the event. Yeah. So small enter. I'll be right back. Search for this. Try to. Oh, there we go. So let me look into the. This is a different one. I think this one I never seen. The other one I've seen before, on the beginning when I was studying this, but this one I never seen. This function. So this is on the same thing is on the constructor. Initialize the window. It's gonna be the same thing. Actually, let me see if there's other ones. So it should be this one captures, the other one updates. So I think this position is where the mouse happen, mouse events, and this is the size of the window. So it's gonna be here probably. But this is to close the window. So I don't think it's gonna go here. But it's weird that it seems that it's not setting anything. That's the thing that is weird. So maybe it's somewhere else. Yeah. So it might be this thing here. The thing it might be implemented on the actual, like on the Windows logic that is not here. I think that's probably more likely, and then here just using the API to get the information from the implementation. So after it moves. Mm. I'm gonna stop streaming now, and I'm going to spend more time just going over this. So probably what I'm gonna do is just put a bunch of breakpoints. Then I'm going to press F5. I'm gonna trigger the breakpoints and then press F5 to clarify what is the connection between all the parts that are related to the mouse down event, both on this class and on the other one, which is the input class that furthers process the events. Then once I have a good idea, the main thing I'm trying to clarify now is what exactly is the logic responsible for dragging the window. And I'm thinking that it's probably the logic from the operational system, because the operational system is going to deal with the state of the window, and then the logic on Godot is going to be to get that state. So the OS moves the window, and then the Godot receives or updates its state based on the logic that the OS actually does. That's how I'm thinking about it right now. But then, so the question that I have is whether or not I can, like, what is the best way to reproduce the dragging without having the border on the window? So I want to go back to setting the flag, which I just turned it off to figure this out, but I want to set this flag to true again so that it doesn't have a border. But I still want to be able to drag the window. That's what I'm trying to achieve. So if I can't figure out the easiest or the best way possible, which is to use the functionality from the operating system or from the display server to, like, maybe there's a flag that I can set or something like that that allows me to still have the dragging without having to actually implement the logic on this class. But if I can't do that, then I either can try to implement on this class here by implementing the different switches on the notification function, or implementing the callbacks on the inputs, like figuring out what callbacks the window class has, or what notifications is gonna call, and then implementing that on this class here so that I can implement the logic myself of setting the flags and moving the HBox container class and moving the position based on the mouse movements. But I don't like that very much, I think. So I'm gonna try to avoid doing that. So, but I'm gonna either have this option, or the other option is gonna be to figure out how to close the window on when the close icon is clicked. It's probably gonna be something related to the display server. So for that one, I think it might be easier because I can just look for functions related to closing the window on the display server, and then I can trace back, or I can put breakpoints and try to, because I imagine that there's probably a flag or something you can use to allow the functionality to happen. It has to be that way, otherwise it would be impossible to close the application window. So I think there must be a way on the display server window to set a flag or something to allow the icon to close the window. So I think the options might be easier, but is less good because it's probably better to try to keep the size of the components small. Yeah, so the first thing that I tried, the main priority is going to be to implement the dragging without having the border. If I can do that, then I'm going to set the flag to true, implement this logic, and then move on to the. Oh, the other thing that I have to do is put the tags, but that's obviously easier, and maybe fix the callbacks after. I probably have to look the callbacks again because I changed some things here. But I also think that's going to be easier to figure out. So once I do all these things, oh, also the position, I have to see if this is going to work. To embed the window. if it doesn't work, I think I'm gonna change the position anyway. I have to see a more reliable way to make sure that the pop-up rectangle is always inside of the text editor. And for some reason on this one, it seems that sometimes it's not. But I think that this is also relatively easier to fix. But once I fix these things, then I can move on to the continuing to implement the rest of the stuff. Yeah, I think that this is the last thing that I'm gonna do for the actual text editing. And then after that is going to be implementing the tab container to manage several different text editors. And once I have these two things, then I can focus on the overall class, which is gonna manage the whole thing. Yeah, so next time I'm gonna continue to do this. We'll see you